Okay.
That's good. Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid Podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky. What's up, Dak? How you doing?
Not much, man. I'm doing good. Yeah, I feel like I don't know what it is. I don't know about you, but I feel like this year compared to last year has been flying by for me. Like I can't believe it's already June. I don't know if that's the same for you, but kind of blowing my mind that it's halfway through the year already. But otherwise, I'm doing great.
You know, a little bit actually. I was talking to the guy that runs Zelda Dungeon, and we got our marathon coming up in like a month. And I was like, it does not feel like marathon season because usually we're like practicing some games, we're kind of getting ready, and it doesn't feel like we're like a month away from mid-July. So I can relate to that, but on the flip side, I'm okay with it because this year has been kind of like a kind of year, so I'm okay if it kind of chugs along a little bit fast, you know.
I totally agree with you there. I'm ready for 2024.
Yeah,
I'm onward. Let's go.
I was ready for 2024 in January, but nevertheless. So yeah, we got some cool Metroid stuff going on in the world, but I know that you wanted to chat just really quickly about the Xbox showcase that went on the other day. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, and I guess I'll throw in my 2 cents there and just like. I haven't watched it because for whatever reason, and we were kind of chatting about this, but like there's just something with like the landscape of Xbox right now that's just, it's not, I don't know, it's not enticing me lately, and I kind of read over a little bit of what they showed, and I still wasn't like completely hooked. It's probably unfair to say because like I said, I haven't watched it, but yeah, I don't know, I was just like I said, I was just not super interested and felt like I didn't have to watch it, you know?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure if you had actually watched it or not. So since you haven't, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it or anything. But yeah, I actually kind of like skip through it here and there. I mostly watched. I mean, I watched the entirety of the Starfield Direct that followed right after, which I really enjoyed, and I can't wait for that game. But aside from that, I know I'm excited for Forza because I just like Forza in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like there's a ton of like Xbox games on the horizon aside from those two that I'm like dying for that I need. But at this point, like, and I was saying this to someone else in our Discord earlier today, like I kind of am enjoying like blurring the lines of these platforms where these games show up, and I don't really like. It doesn't really bother me like who's making the game. Like I'm not like following Xbox or following PlayStation. I'm kind of just seeing like where the games pop up and where I can play them, hopefully on PC or my Switch. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like the last state of play for PlayStation. I feel like that was a lot of like third party games, so they weren't exactly like a lot of Sony first party games either.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Xbox has more first party games, but not a lot of them I'm particularly super excited for, aside from the ones I just mentioned. And even then, like Starfield's like a Bethesda game. It's not really a Microsoft Game Studios game or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess that's owned by Microsoft now, so I don't know. But
maybe
it's like,
maybe not.
Well, they're dealing with the Activision acquisition right now. I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. It's the Activision one.
But
I feel like I'm in a little bit of a funk with like my Xbox PlayStation games right now, and I kind of hate coming on my podcast and sounding like a big Nintendo homer, but like. I don't know, man. I've kind of struggled a little bit. Like I've got a bunch of Xbox and PlayStation games that I have, and I don't know. I just like haven't, for whatever reason, sat down and played. The last game I played was Elden Ring, and I hated it. So I've been in a little bit of a funk. But I don't know. Xbox has got some cool stuff going on. Like I'm looking forward to Perfect Dark whenever that resurfaces. I wish they'd bring back like Banjo. I know that again.
I was hoping for a Banjo game to get announced.
I feel like a Nintendo homer saying that, but like, man, I think that'd be awesome. And like, it would print. I think it would print money. I don't know, but
I don't know if it would print, but I would buy it, which is enough for me.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, I almost feel like at this point, I have so many games I already still need to play, and like other games, like multiplayer games that I play all the time anyway, that I almost feel like I don't need that many major game releases per year anymore, too. I don't know if like maybe you feel the same way, but like I feel like once I get like Starfield, Armored Core 6, Forza, whatever Metro, like these games are going to come out and I'm going to play them for a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to keep playing the multiplayer games that I play. So like, I'm almost like not super dissuaded by it. Like, I feel like as long as there's 1 or 2 games every like, half year or year that I'm really looking forward to that I like, I'm good. I don't need really much more than that. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Like kind of sorta, I guess. But I would say what I would typically prefer is, because I like to play a variety of like different games, but I would typically prefer a bunch of like shorter, smaller games. Ideally, that costs a little bit less, which is something that we'll segue into here in just a sec. But like even with Tears of the Kingdom, like I've been playing it for a month solid, and usually I don't play games for like that long. I'll kind of do them, beat them, move on to something else in my backlog or whatever, right? But like I'm going to be playing Tears of the Kingdom for a while, and like even that is just like a little bit not like overwhelming, but like eventually I know I'm gonna be like, okay, like I'm itching to play something else, and it leaves me dissatisfied if I'm just like I haven't done everything that there is to do,
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of where, for me, that's when I fall back on like, Valorant or whatever it is, where like, okay, I'm done playing this game that I've been grinding for a bunch. I'm going to go back to the games that I usually play all the time until the next thing comes around for me to play, or, whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know. I watched the Xbox. I mean, I watched it in bits and pieces and like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Like, oh, all right, maybe that's not for me, blah, blah, blah. But then like, I was kind of there for Starfield. I'm super excited for that. I can't wait for Starfield, and I think that's going to be like that. That's like the one Xbox game I kind of need. I wish there was more going on with Halo, but it is what it is. So, but I mean, I saw mixed reactions online. I saw people like, oh, this wasn't really for me at all. I saw some people like, this is the best Xbox Direct, one of the best I've ever seen. Yeah. I never know with them these days. Like, there's so many different interests and people that are watching them now that like, you show one kind of game a bunch and everyone's like, oh, why are you showing this? You show this kind of game a bunch. Oh, why am I seeing this? Like, you can never satisfy anybody. So I hope there was at least something for at least one thing for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like if they showed like 12 Metroidvanias, like for me, I'd be like, oh, what a great direct. But then I would imagine most other people are like, that was terrible. All they showed was, or like if, that one infamous Nintendo Direct where there was like farming sim after farming sim after farming sim. Like if you're a fan of that, you probably were like, this is awesome. But if you're not,
well, there was even like the first Summer Games Fest like director, the main like show they did like within the past week, where I think there was like a segment of the show for like 20-30 minutes. They just showed like Game of Thrones style medieval fantasy games back to back to back. I was like, oh my god, like these kind of fantasy fans are eating, but geez, like it spread them out a little bit at least. Like I would have been so mad if I was like the developer of like the 5th game they showed.
Yeah,
where like they're getting the biggest groans of they see their game come up. Everyone's like, oh, not another one, and they work so hard in there. It's like I almost felt bad for some of them for that reason.
Yeah,
because honestly, a lot of them like look good or fun, but it's like it's so the saturation of it all at once, which trends come and go. Like we were saying in the Discord, there's shows where they show 3 or 4 sci-fi FPS games in a row. And to me, I'm like, oh yeah. But someone like you're like, oh my God, I just saw the same game 5 times in a row and they all look exactly the same. Maybe not you, but other people.
I would say personally, I can be lukewarm on those. I think it's more so like I get a little bit tired because I've had to cover many years the Game Awards for Zelda Dungeon, where it's like cinematic trailer, little to no gameplay. Let's go.
Oh, well, of course.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit burned out on those, but no, I mean, like I think even if there wasn't anything that like completely like gripped me, I still think Starfield is probably going to be pretty cool. I think it'll be, that's kind of the problem with Xbox and PlayStation, and maybe why I'm in a little bit of a funk is because like I feel like they've conditioned me to like never buy anything when it comes out, because in 6 months to a year it's going to be at least half price. And I kind of feel the same way about Starfield, where like I'm sure I'll probably get it, but it'll probably be like a decent amount of time after it comes out. So
that's a good point, because I think that does apply for me as well. But for like the next tier of games, I guess like Starfield is a game where I'm gonna see people playing it, like I'm not gonna want to miss out. I'm gonna want to play it immediately. But most games aren't like that for me, and I would assume for most people, where you want to play it immediately, you need to play it. There are a lot of games where you're like, oh, I would like to play it, but because I know it's going to be on Game Pass for $1 or whatever in a month, I don't need to play it right now. And that's a majority of games. The games, your Starfields, your Zeldas, whatever it is, like those are games I'm going to want to play frame one, whatever it is. But maybe the game that I'm 90% excited about, but like I don't have that 10%. I'm like, oh, I need to play it day one. Now I'm even more incentivized not to play it anytime soon because of stuff like Game Pass, which I don't know if that's like their intent. And I don't even think I have Game Pass anymore because I don't like I was saying earlier, like I only buy a few games like every so often per year. Like I have so many games I haven't played yet. I don't need a now access to limitless games that I'm not going to play a majority anyway. And if there is a game I do want to play and it's like on Game Pass that month, I can just subscribe for the single month, play the game at a cheaper cost than buying it full price, and then not subscribe anymore. So I can do that on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know. There's a double-edged sword to it.
Yeah. Well, so to segue here into shorter games that are cheaper, we got Metroid Dread on sale right now for I want to say
like $41.
Something it's like 30% off or something like that. So it's on for a good price right now. So I can't imagine anybody listening to this show hasn't at least checked out Metroid Dread, like the demo a little bit. But if by some chance you haven't played Metroid Dread, now's a good time.
Jump on it.
If you've been trying to convince somebody to play Metroid and they're not doing it, now is your time where you can buy it on the cheap. You can give it to them and you can say like, this is your birthday present. This is your early Christmas present. Here's Metroid Dread. You're gonna love it. Which I feel like is kind of an apropos happening because it feels like once every like couple months it's like that talk goes around where people are like, Metroid Dread shouldn't have been priced at $60 or $80 here in Canada and whatever a lot. Some people were having that debate. I don't even engage in that debate anymore, but it's a thing, I guess, and we've talked about it before. I'm pretty like I'm of the opinion like, listen, like I don't care how long it is. It looks great. There's a lot of polish to it. It plays great. I don't think like every single major game needs to be like 1,000 hours long, as I was just saying with Tears of the Kingdom. So I personally was completely fine with it. I don't know. Where do you lie? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it before the show because I think it is a very multifaceted topic. I think. Also, I think it's a coincidence because the reason why I if I'm not mistaken, wow, I wonder if I can go a single episode without hitting my mic.
I don't think so.
I feel like I do it every single week. It's crazy. So if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the reason why it was brought up is because there was a new Prince of Persia game that was announced, and it's like a 2D Metroidvania type game. And then they also announced a new Sonic game, which is a 2D Sonic. So I think the debate was brought up like, oh, they're making more of these 2D games. They're not worth full price. Why am I spending full price for these 2D games, blah, blah. And then Metroid Dread was brought up because it's like, I would say one of the more bigger 2D game releases in the past couple of years. I think we could all agree on that. So at least one of the more notable ones.
Definitely, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it comes down to, I guess, your perspective on like what is the monetary value of a game? Is it the amount of content, the quality of content, the replayability, the hours you put into it? Like, I can kind of see the argument of someone looking at a game like, for example, Starfield, right, and be like, this is a $60 game or $70 game, whatever it is. Why am I paying $60? Even though you could technically, I guess, get on Game Pass for less than that, but whatever. $60 retail for a game like Starfield with, I mean, however much cram-packed into it versus a game like Metroid Dread, which you might beat in 3 hours and only play once, and that's that. I see the logic of like where they're coming from on that. On the other hand, I mean, you're not paying, like, I don't necessarily think like amount of content correlates to the value of it. Like you said, Dread's a very polished game. It's a lot of fun. You get your value out of it by playing it. And there is replayability. Replayability. Like the game is fun to play multiple times. You have boss rush, you have hard mode, whatever it is. What I argued has a ton of replayability. For me personally, no. But I guess the debate has become so muddled because of the scope of games nowadays, right? Like how crazy big AAA games can be, number one. Number two, the blurring of the line of what games cost, like not just in an economical sense, like in terms of inflation or whatever it is, but like when you have games like Valorant or whatever it is that are free to play, right? And you can put tons of hours into those. And a lot of people are almost like raised on, I mean, a lot of kids and younger player and gamers these days are kind of raised on free to play games. So like you kind of almost decide how much money you want to put into it, but you can put endless hours into it, right? Versus full $60 length releases where you kind of have to put your money down first. It's so muddied these days. Like, what is the value of a game other than what you decided is personally? And obviously for Dread, almost 3 million people decided that $60 was definitely worth the price. But on the other hand, would Dread have sold more if it was $40 like Metroid Prime Remastered? I personally think like Metroid Prime Remastered being only $40 was a great move because if it was just a remake and blah, blah, but it's still a full length game. Arguably, it's a bigger game than Dread. Why wouldn't it be priced $60? Why shouldn't Dread be paid $40 in comparison? So I don't know. I think Dread is fine priced at $60, but I will say that the argument around it, I think, is very
I can see it
muddied. I don't know.
I can see the perspective and that argument. I definitely can. And the one example that gets bandied about a lot is Hollow Knight as a comparable, because Hollow Knight is a very polished game.
Oh, Hollow Knight. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another game. Go ahead.
It's a long Metroidvania too. It's like I played it and I think I beat it in like 30 some hours. So it's a long Metroidvania and it's like half the price. And people are like, well, Hollow Knight cost this. And I guess my answer to that is like, I think Hollow Knight should have cost $60. And I think that the sequel will cost $60 and probably should cost $60. So, I mean, like, it is what it is. Like, if you don't, if it's not worth it to you, wait for it to go on sale like it is right now. Yeah. Or, I mean, skip past it and see. Maybe Nintendo will bring back Nintendo Selects one day. But it is, it is like murky. And I will say, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but like on the flip side of what I was talking about with Xbox and PlayStation, Nintendo has basically conditioned me to be like, our games are never going on sale, dude. So if you want to play this game, you might as well just get it right away, right? Because like you're never gonna save any money. It's gonna be like 2 years and it'll go down by like $20. So I'm just like, whatever. I'm just gonna buy it, play it, and I guess the last thing I would say too is, and I hate sounding like this big Nintendo shill, but like I do think that there's at least a proven track record in terms of a quality. Whereas if you were to tell me that like there's a new 2D Sonic game and it was $60, I would be very iffy about that, because Sonic isn't that far off from Kirby in my book, where it's like every game this guy has a new gimmick, nothing really sticks. It's kind of like, okay, that didn't work, let's try this new thing. That didn't work, okay, we're gonna put Sonic in the Breath of the Wild world and see how that works. So like, I will say, at least for Metroid, there's a little bit of trust there on my part that they're going to get it right.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think there is a bit of more of a quality assuredness, I think, maybe with Nintendo in terms of how they value their games and then just their general track record. Though even Metroid's not at all, impervious. It's not impervious to that, So, but yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I think there's so many factors that go into it right now. I mean, personally, I think Dread was worth the $60. It was a great game. But on the other hand, because I was thinking about this way too, is let's say Metroid Dread wasn't a Metroid game, right? It was a different IP entirely. The game was exactly the same, but it wasn't Metroid. Would I have still spent $60 on it? And personally, I don't know if I would have immediately, like I wouldn't have bought it day one, and I might have waited till it went on sale. But I think that's only because of my personal preference of I like Metroid more than Metroidvania. Like I don't go out of my way to play Metroidvania games very often outside of Metroid. So I think that's probably what leads into it. But I think there is something kind of to that. Like if it wasn't a Metroid game, would I have been more likely to buy it if it was only $40? I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But I think there might be something to that.
I mean, there probably is. Like, I think there's assuredly something to that. But I guess, like, because it is a Metroid game, then you do have that expectation of quality, and you have, like, kind of an expectation of, like, a little bit of, like, familiarity almost with, like, what kind of experience you're going to get. So, like...
Paying for that,
yeah. Yeah, like I think that helps it, but... I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's very subjective, and I would just say to that, like I think Metroid Dread is a $60 game, like every day. I think it looks great, it runs great. There's some things about it that aren't like absolutely top notch, but I would say that most of that stuff is more like on the subjective side, like the story. You know, some people like it, some people don't. Music, some people think it's fine, some people think it's bad. But like I would say that like those are probably the biggest issues that I've seen with it. Like when in terms of like how the game runs, in terms of gameplay, in terms of bosses, like kind of the things that you want to build your Metroidvania on. I still think that like it's a quality experience, and should probably be priced as such.
Yeah, I think it's just. Yeah, no, I agree. With the Switch especially, I think it's hard because it's like a hybrid console, right? It's like it's not just a handheld, it's also a console. And if I remember correctly, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I remember growing up, if I remember correctly, Nintendo console games were always $10 more than like their Game Boy Advance or DS games.
Yeah, they used to be like $30 more here actually towards the end.
Yeah,
of the
maybe
3DS.
It was like 20, yeah, maybe it was like $20. Yeah, but I always remember them being less priced than a main like home console game. And so I was thinking about it that way too, is let's say there was like a console Switch, and like the Switch we know is the handheld, like the Dread to me reminds me more of like a handheld Metroid. So I could see it maybe being costing less than if it was like a Metroid Prime game. Yeah. But at the same time, Super Metroid released on a home console and released full price back in the day too. And there was no issue with that. So
even like Castlevania of the Night. But I do think that you have a point, actually, because the one example that always kind of sticks out to me is Link's Awakening for the Switch, which came out in 2019, which is a 3DS game, if I've ever seen one. But it's on the Switch, because there is no 3DS anymore. So like that one, and obviously I'm a Zelda guy, but like that one was a little bit tougher for me, because I was just like, man, I can beat this game in like 10 hours. But I mean, at the end of the day, everything I said still applies. It's got a ton of polish. It's fun. It's a quality experience. So I was like, okay, whatever. I think that title in particular didn't help by coming out like immediately after Breath of the Wild, which is so gargantuan, right? Like, I don't even know if I said that right, but it was such a big game that it was like Link's Awakening is just this little itty bitty tiny like adventure, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. And because when you bring that over to Metroid, I feel like it almost doesn't apply, because you look at Samus Returns versus Dread, and you can see, Samus Returns is a 3DS game, but when you look at Dread, could I have seen that on the 3DS? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it fits more on the Switch than the 3DS.
Yeah,
I think so. It's hard. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting debate. At the end of the day, I just thought it was kind of interesting that like Dread got pulled back into this, and hey, people are talking about it, and I still think it is interesting that Dread is kind of now pointed to as that like most recent big kind of 2D game, which I think is great. And I think people kind of getting up in arms about what these games cost. These are still quality games. I mean, I don't know what the Prince of Persia game or what the other one's going to look like, but Dread's a quality game. It was worth the price, and certainly millions of others agreed. But it is interesting stuff to think about, especially we have at least one more Metroid game we know of on the horizon, which I'm also assuredly certain will be a full-priced Metroid game.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt.
But it is kind of funny because like I said, like I took a huge L on this. I said for forever, I'm like, there's no way Metroid Prime HD comes out and is not a full price game. Like that just seems mind-boggling to me. And then they did it, and I was just like, okay, well, I what do I know? I guess. But that also seemed like a strange decision. So let's segue over. We got a couple. We're bringing back Samus's percentages here. We're gonna dust off this old classic, and I've tried to kind of theme it around Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Prime HD a little bit. But I figured we'd start off starting some hardware here really quickly. And for anybody that does not know, this is how Samus percentages works. Very simple. I read a statement, and we will give a percentage, with 100% being we completely 100% think it's going to happen, 0% being there is no possible way. There's no possible way on this planet Earth that the statement will come true. So let's go.
Okay.
And by the way, I thought of most of these, but just because I thought of them, there are many that I obviously do not think are going to happen. So let's just go here.
All right.
Okay.
I'm in.
Nintendo reveals plans for new hardware this year, so in 2023.
Ooh.
And I will say, so we're on 6 years of the Switch, and we're getting up there with the longest console life basically ever for Nintendo. I think the Wii was 6 years, right? NES was I don't know, 5 maybe
Wow.
maybe six actually. So not necessarily that this hardware will be out this year, but that they at least will reveal something.
Wow. Well, we've talked so much about when we think Metroid Prime 4 drops. I don't think we've ever really discussed like when we think the next console drops. On one hand, it's like, man, the Switch still feels like it has more juice in the tank, but on the other hand, you're right. It's been about the amount of time that they would reveal something new. I'm gonna give that my gut feeling is giving me a 78%.
Ooh, okay.
That's I think it's very likely. I think it's very likely. I think because you're right. We're not gonna get it this year. The hardware, whatever it is. I wouldn't even be. I would think at the earliest it would be holiday of next year, 2024. Which is, by the way, when I think Metroid Prime 4 could potentially release, even though I think I might have also said holiday 2023. Maybe not, but
whatever.
But holiday 2024 for a new console, or announcing it this year and then releasing it in the end of next year, could definitely see that. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a nice 78%. What about you?
I'm gonna go a little bit lower, but I'm gonna go over 50. I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna pick a random number. I'm gonna say 59%, because I feel like, what was it, 2 years ago? Actually, when Metroid Dread came out, when the Switch OLED came out with it seemed like you couldn't like turn a corner without hearing a new report of Nintendo making new screens and buying new chips and new whatevers to make a Switch Pro. And obviously that ended up being the OLED. And it's kind of been quiet on that front for a long time. And then usually you can hear like some rumblings when when Nintendo starts to get busy on their next project. And certainly like you kind of hear like, you remember hearing about Dolphin for a long time, or the Revolution, or
the good old Revolution
the
days,
Revolution,
man.
or the good old NX, which I always thought was a cool name, by the way. I can't remember what the Wii U was called, but it probably wasn't anything important.
The Wii U, wow, that's a good one. I'm gonna look that up. What was the code name for Wii U?
But I don't know. But I feel like it's got to come at some point.
Project Cafe. I do remember that. Project Cafe.
Even that compared to like NX and Revolution is just lame.
I love the Revolution. Just to go to that real quick as a quick tangent, I will never forget like either the reveal or like I think it was even a big page ad or like splash art in the Nintendo Power magazine with the black Wii with the blue light where the disc was, and it was like Revolution. I'm like, oh, that looks so sick. I want like. It's so funny because it's such a complete departure of what the Wii actually is, which is essentially like a baby's toy. That like the Revolution, man, like, oh, it's gonna be like the next. It was the next evolution in gaming, just not in the way
not the way we thought. Yeah.
Not in the way we thought, and so they were right with the name. It was a revolution.
Certainly very successful, but not okay. Well, this is actually a great segue.
Wait, before you segue, I'm sorry. Okay, I hate to cut off your great segue.
No,
but
please.
There was one comment I wanted to make. Is another reason why I think it's very likely is with the release of Tears of the Kingdom, it feels like a wrap up to the console to me. Like the first big game for the Switch was Breath of the Wild, right? The big Zelda game release. And then the console ends, I think, with the next big Zelda release, Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think that's their intention, but I just feel like, I don't know, it's poetic. It like what other doesn't seem, aside from Pikmin 4, which to me I'm like whatever. It doesn't seem like there's anything. Pikmin does not do anything for me. It looks like a very watered down strategy game. I'm sorry. I've never played or looked at Pikmin and been like, oh, this is it.
I think you would be pleasantly surprised. I'm just gonna say. But
I will say I've never really given it I will say I've never really given it a big try, but I've played it before, and when I played it, I wasn't super impressed. So maybe I just gotta really sit down and give it a try. I've only played it at like friends' houses, but anyway.
I think you're onto something there, actually, though, because like there's really nothing else. Like for
There's
the
nothing
rest of
else.
the
Like
year.
aside from literally in their financial report, all they had listed was Tears of the Kingdom. Like we went over this, I think, on the site and on the show.
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, and then Metroid Prime 4. That's it. So there's no new Mario. Obviously, Pokemon comes out all the time, but like we don't know what's going on with that. What other big? The Zelda just had its big release. Like there really isn't. Like we don't know anything about Animal Crossing.
They'll have some DLC for it, but
right,
really, we're at the 12th of June, which I mean, I almost forgot. Like this is basically E3 time, and like there's no new. Like it seems like a Nintendo Direct should be imminent, and which is actually kind of funny because like it feels like for forever, all like the anticipation for the Nintendo Direct was like at such a high. And now the Tears of the Kingdom's out, everyone's just kind of like, whatever, like hit us in
What's there
September.
to look forward to? Yeah. I mean, well, everyone's also busy playing the games they've been releasing. You know, everyone's like heads down actually playing, which I think is
when I'm finished Zelda in September, like then hit me with the Nintendo Direct. But
you bring up September because I feel like we've had a September Direct over the past few years every year. I mean, I'm pretty sure, and I feel like Nintendo's been kind of overall trying to get away from the E3 season, because it just dilutes everyone's attention, right? Like, why not put out directs when nothing else is happening, as opposed to right in the middle of when everyone's making announcements? As much as like the camaraderie of all the big news coming out at the same time is great, Nintendo's always carved their own path. They've always done stuff at different times in different ways, and it makes a ton of sense that they're like, oh, we're gonna do our directs in like September, just before the holiday season. Like we're gonna, stuff like that, where no one else is releasing big news as they announced it months prior in the E3 Games Fest season. But yeah, you bring up September. I would not be surprised if September comes along and they're like, switch to, I don't know,
I can
switch
see that.
to Project Tortilla, like whatever it is, like whatever it is, and announcing that. So, yeah.
We need a Project Tortilla shirt at OmegaMetroid.com. That's so good. Okay, well here's my segue into the next Samus's percentages. So here we go. Metroid Prime 4 will release on the next Nintendo console as well as the Switch, and I'm going high.
That's a 95 for me. I'm up there.
I was gonna say 90. Just to be different than you, I'll say 93, but I'm high on this.
I'm saying 95, which is a big reason what my basis of the previous question was, really, because I think Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title for this new system. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for them to put Retro on this new project and be like, hey, by the way, like 2-3 years into development, or like the game's release, whatever it is, like there's a new system, like.
Well, can you imagine?
I feel like they're probably one of the first studios that got a new system dev kit, if anything. I would think.
My heart would sink if they sent out Metroid Prime 4 in like the death slot when they've already announced a new console. Let's say, even if they had plans for it, there's no release date. People already have one eye on the next console, so it's like, well, why am I playing this Metroid Prime 4 game if it's not even going to be on the Switch 2 or whatever? So I'm pretty high on that. I guess Nintendo's made some pretty boneheaded decisions with Metroid before, so I guess I could see that happening. But like, at this point, 6 years into the Switch's lifespan, like I can't wrap my head around them not releasing it for the Switch 2. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be a launch title.
I think it's going to be a launch title. I think the new Mario game is also going to be a launch title-ish game. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been a new Mario in mad long, and I feel like that's the same boat.
It's going to be 6 years, yeah.
It's going to be 6 years. I feel like it's the same boat where they're like, let's not develop another Mario game for this Switch when we know we're going to be in development for a while, and by that time, the Switch is going to be on its way out. Right. I wouldn't be surprised if they've also been developing the new Mario for the new system as well. Probably even the new Animal Crossing, I have to imagine. And
probably Mario Kart too. I mean, throw
probably.
That in there,
And I'm sure the next Zelda game is now in development for the new system. Yeah, I think now Nintendo has enough faith in Metroid to not do it dirty that way and put it in the death slot. I really do. I mean, there's been conflicting reports of like Dread didn't sell as well as Nintendo hoped. Metroid Prime Remastered sold better than they hoped, blah, blah, blah. No one really knows. Mm-hmm. But I'd have to imagine that a game that they know will sell millions of units, to some degree, millions of units. Like even if you put Dread and Remastered together, both games have sold close to 5 million units, right?
I think you could take Metroid Prime 4 selling 2.5 million to the bank, like easy, like done.
I think Metroid Prime 4 is outselling Dread. No contest. If that's the case, and they didn't put Metroid Dread in the death slot, I have to imagine that they're not going to do that for Metroid Prime 4. I can't see that. It wouldn't make any sense. I feel like for them to invest back into Retro Studios, right? We know they literally invested in Retro Studios. I feel like what we reported on it like a year and a half, 2 years ago, how they invested $100 million. Yeah, they saved them, like spent $100,000 on like renovating their studio, whatever it is. They made new hires. Like that doesn't make any sense to me for them to invest that money and then intentionally have the game fail. Like it's one thing to maybe try to counter market, right? Which is what they did in the past with Metroid Prime releasing it around Halo. That's one thing. But they never they didn't release Metroid Prime 3 in 2011, right? I mean, to be fair, Other M was released late, but there was already a big game on the system by then, you know? So yeah, I do agree. I think Metroid Prime 4 is, if anything, I feel like Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the game that they're going to be like, here's how games look on the Switch too. Yeah. Boom, you show Metroid Prime 4. Like that's the perfect, especially after how Metroid Prime Remastered looked on Switch. Like I feel like they have to know that like, ooh, this is a game that we can use to like show that side of the system, you know, and aside from it having awesome gameplay. Yep, I think 95% for me. I think that's happening.
Okay, well, another segue here. You keep on serving them up for me. This is a spicy meatball that I stole this from someone on Twitter, and I should have looked at their name and I forgot, but I reworded it slightly. But here we go. Metroid Prime HD would have sold more with a proper build rather than a shadow drop. That's a kind of a spicy meatball. I think I could see the argument. But I'm not convinced that it would have. I'm not convinced that it would have. I think that like the Nintendo Direct, when people were watching, had, I mean, millions of people watching it, and it was a pretty prominent announcement. Like it wasn't in like the death slot or anything like that. Like it had a pretty good placement, and I feel like lots of people probably impulsively bought it. So I feel like that alone would counteract kind of maybe the word of mouth hype kind of building up. I don't know what my percentage is though. I'm not going to go super low or super high or anything like that. But I don't necessarily think that it would have sold more if we had like a 3-month lead up to it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. On one hand, I wanted to immediately be like, yes, it would have sold more. But it does seem like one of those games where if let's say someone hears about it 3 months before the game comes out, right? They can't buy it immediately. They can't act on that need or desire or want like that. Let's say there's 100,000 people that are just like that. Is all 100,000 of those people 3 months later going to remember or want to buy Metroid Prime Remastered 3 months later?
Right.
I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced. Yeah, I think because of the nature of the game, where number one, it's a very kind of like what you say is what you get kind of game. Like it's not like there's a huge twist at the end that needs to be saved spoiler wise, right? It's a game that's been out for 20 years. A lot of people who are going to buy it probably played it already. Is marketing it like a big game 3 months ahead of time really going to generate more sales? I don't know. I still want to say yes, but on the other hand, I do think the ability of like the impulse of like, oh, you see it, you can get it now. I do think that is a really strong, I think that's a very powerful marketing tool of being able to impulse buy that kind of thing, especially because it wasn't a full price game. It was only $40.
Exactly. I think that's like the biggest thing too, is like it was cheaper and it was available right away. And lots of people were probably like, great, I'll check this out. Perfect.
Yes. I mean, this is hard because this is more of like a yes or no question than like a spectrum of how much you feel. So personally, if it were up to me, I think I would have still done what Nintendo did in this game. In this case, I would have announced it as is and then market it as it's out. You know, maybe I would have extended the tail end of that marketing push maybe a bit longer, but at that point, that's counting dollars and cents of how much Nintendo wants to invest into it. And I'm sure they wanted to cut costs as much as they could on a smaller game like this.
Yeah.
But I think for this kind of game, yeah, the shadow drop and like the marketing afterward, the ability to act on that impulse of seeing it, being able to buy it immediately was very powerful. and maybe even announcing it before you could buy it might have been detrimental to it.
I tell you what, I'm gonna go.
I don't know, man. That's hard. That's a hard one.
So the question is worded as it would have sold more with a proper build rather than a shadow drop, which I think I disagree with the sentiment. So I'm gonna go 38% because I do think there's merit to it. It could have sold more with a proper build. I do think that, but then I think that also goes to like what the game actually is, and like we know it looks great. There was a bunch of different controls. But I also don't think that there's like necessarily a lot of other things with the game beyond that. If you're just kind of strictly like a gameplay guy, which I mean, let's face it, a lot of Nintendo fans are. It's not like we're getting the best graphics and whatever on the Switch. Mm-hmm. So like if you're not like super impressed by that, I could see where it's like, okay, well, like what does this game have to offer that's new that wasn't like available to me on GameCube or whatever. So.
Right.
I'm taking the under, but I can see the argument.
I think, okay, so in my understanding of this, I would say, like, let's say below 50% is a no, above 50% is a yes.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and like 50% is right in the middle, obviously. For me, I'm gonna put it like a 45. Whereas okay. I think it's the nuanced thing. And it could have gone either way, but I'm leaning more towards the strategy they implemented was the right one, and I think resulted in more sales. But I don't think I know enough to confidently say that more to one way or the other.
Right.
But if it were up to me, I think I would have done the same thing. Maybe again the marketing afterward a bit different, but the execution from start to finish, like whether they announced it beforehand or not, I think I would have done the same thing. I don't think it would have necessarily increased sales, but I see a case for both sides. I'm very almost on the fence for that one, slightly leaning towards obviously what I said. No.
Okay, well,
that's a good one though. That was a good one.
Let's move on and let's go back to Metroid Prime 4 here.
Okay.
At least one classic boss that is not Ridley returns for Metroid Prime 4. So I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I would hope like Ridley's coming back. Like it's actually
Ridley better be in this.
It's been a long time without our man.
He better be. Can we talk about that real quick? I know people are
6 years since the last Ridley fight.
Yes, that is way too long as far as I'm concerned. I know there are people in like, oh, Ridley's overplayed, blah blah. No. In fact, I say no to you, sir and or madam. Or whomever, right? No. To me, Samus and Ridley, that like rivalry is such a massive part of what makes Metroid what it is. Like that character interaction, I think, is very important, very crucial.
I think to add to that quickly too,
very enjoyable. You gotta have them.
I agree, and like yes, I think that some games. You can get like Metroid Prime 2 being in the middle, like okay, like I don't think you needed Ridley there, but like it's not that like no, but
the concept art was sick. The concept art was sick for him. Like they would have been dope if he was in, but I agree they didn't need him in all three parts of the trilogy. But go ahead.
Here's what I would say to people that are like, well, the Ridley thing's kind of overdone and it doesn't make sense in a storyline, and it's like I would say like, well, sure, like Ridley is quote unquote dead in the series or whatever, but like it's up to Nintendo to figure out a cool way to like how to bring him back. Like an Emmy Ridley, I think we always talked about like would have been awesome, and that would have been a cool way to bring him back. Or like
the Emmy Ridley would have been sick.
Man. Ridley X is a great example of like a cool way to bring him back. Not a cool way, but an all right idea in theory is cloning him, which is in theory not a bad idea. But so like what I'm saying is like I think it's up to them to like justify how Ridley comes back. But I agree. I think like Samus versus Ridley is like, I mean it's like Mario versus Bowser. Like you gotta have it.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it every once in a while, more frequently than not.
Let this sink in. Tears of the Kingdom is the first Zelda game in like 17 years to have Ganondorf. Like that's wild. Like I feel like I want to be fighting Ganondorf like a lot. You know.
That is kind of mind-blowing to me.
Like, since Twilight Princess. Like,
yeah. I guess it's because, like, at least, like, to me, I'm like, oh, well, we've had Ganon, but I know, like, Ganon and Ganondorf are, like, it's not the same vibe. Like, he's, you know, we need some Ridley. I wish we got Ridley in Dread. I I think also for Metroid Prime 4, if it takes place when we think it does, which should be anytime between Prime 3 and 2, he's still alive. So he should, in all likelihood, appear. And I think for a Prime game, like, come on, you gotta have like a Ridley fight in a Prime game. Like two didn't have one, Echoes didn't have one.
Yeah. I feel very confident that he's coming back.
Tangent Samus percentages, but likelihood of Ridley showing up in Prime 4, 100% for me.
I'd say like 98, just because I'm allowing some percentage for silliness.
I'm not. I know in my heart.
You gotta have him back, right? Like it's been a long time. It's a showcase game. It's almost like it's not quite a reboot of the Metroid Prime series, but I guess in a lot of ways it kind of is. So I feel like Ridley's got to be there. Okay, but
going back to the original
one classic, but I was pretty of the opinion that I'm like, okay, Kraid's coming back in this Metroid Prime game. They have the idea, the concept, and now that he was in Dread, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually, for me, I'm gonna put that at about. I'm gonna put that at a 40. I think there is some likelihood to it, but I don't think there's a lot. If you look at the Metroid Prime games, in every Metroid Prime, I think the only recurring boss from previous Metroid games, aside from Dark Samus from 2 to 3, and I guess if you count Metroid Prime itself, is Ridley, right? All the other bosses are completely new to the game bosses. So I think that trend's going to stay. Is like they're going to take the opportunity to create whole new enemies, which as a creator, I totally understand that. You want to see your own vision, create something new. On the other hand, I'm sure everyone wants to take their stab at their own Ridley and how that would be dope. So like that I totally get. And I think that's like what we'll get the Ridley reappearance, but everything else will be brand new. And then if Silex is involved, I think if you're including Silex in that,
I wouldn't include Silex. No.
Okay, if you're including Silex, then yes, I think it's very likely because I think he's going to be the main antagonist. But if you're not including Silex,
no Silex.
If you're not including Silex in that, then I actually think it's kind of low, and I'm okay with that. I look, you made a good point there. Is like when Kraid showed up. At this point, I love Kraid, and I think, and maybe I'm not as big a Kraid fan as you are, but I thought it was really cool to have Kraid back. On the other hand, it's kind of like it was almost like he's here, and then like it could have been anybody, like it was obvious fan service, and it was kind of like he's so not that he was ever built up as like a big heel or anything, to use that kind of term, but like I almost feel like now he's kind of maybe joke's the wrong word, but like Samus was playing with him, and it's like I don't really want to see old bosses from previous games come back and have Samus just like not even try and destroy them, like doesn't do anything for me. That said, if they bring back the original concept for Metroid from the original Metroid Prime,
let's go. That
would be sick, and I would be very down for that. I don't think it's likely. I don't think they're going to do that as much as I would love them to do it. So I'm going to keep it at 40%. What do you think?
I want to say my original answer is going to be like 55%, but like I think this is a case of like I want something, so I'm giving it a higher likelihood than it probably actually has. Because as you were talking, I was like yeah, you're right. Like there's really not any repeat bosses in the Metroid Prime series. A lot of repeat bosses in the 2D series, a lot, but not necessarily in Metroid Prime. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, well, obviously all the hunters are out; they're not coming back. Metroid Prime itself, Dark Samus, probably not coming back. The creatures on Talon 4, like at least in 2D Metroid, there's sort of kind of like a reason for some of these bosses to reappear. You're right about Kraid. That's fan service, but I'll take it, so I don't mind. So I guess I'm gonna go a little bit lower too. Maybe I'll go like, honestly, maybe I'll go like 35%. But I do think it would be like so awesome. Like if you're in a water level or something like that, and you see like 3D Ceres, like man, that'd be cool. Or like Dragon appears in 3D, like with a grapple gimmick attached to him. Like I think that'd be awesome. Do I think just because I think it would be awesome that it's probably going to happen? No, unfortunately not. But man, I would love to see that.
I agree with that. I would love to see bosses go from one genre to another.
Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily need to see another adult Sheegoth fight, right? But if Ceres is the fight in 3D, then that's cool. Or if they bring Adult Sheegoth to 2D, that'd be cool. Like it wouldn't make any sense, but like if I would love to fight the security box from
Oh
Robot from
man,
Fusion.
that'd be good.
Would be
That'd be
awesome.
great.
But I also think, like, just from their perspective, I think when you translate that boss to another dimension, you kind of have to change things and add things to it that I think kind of changes them up from their initial state. In which case they could probably just create a new character that's kind of in spirit, right? And not necessarily the same enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, on the other hand, Metroid Prime, as much as I said, doesn't share a lot of bosses or repeats them, does share, a lot of minor enemies with like the 2D games and previous, Metroid Primes, So there is that, like, there's Zoomers and Gamers and Shriekbacks or whatever in Metroid Prime, and Beetles and all sorts of Metroids and other things carry over from one Metroid Prime to another, as we've seen. So there is that aspect. So it's not impossible, but I think the bosses specifically, they try to make them, more unique game to game, aside from Ridley and the main bad guy, who is obviously Metroid Prime and Dark Samus the whole time. But outside of that, they try to diversify it and keep it original and unique. So that's why I'm staying 40%.
Well, we've kind of talked about this one before, but I just an impromptu Samus's percentages here, because a boss that I think would work like really well in 3D would be Ravenbeak, or maybe like another Chozo. So here's my impromptu question: Ravenbeak returns in any future Metroid game, not specifically Metroid Prime, but like any Metroid game, or is he just a one and done villain? I think at this point I'm not super optimistic about it. Actually, I'm gonna go really low on this, probably like 20%. But
okay,
it does feel like a little bit of a shame that they whacked Ravenbeak so early. Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, not really.
Yeah, I think that's a shame that they killed Ravenbeak. I honestly, I understood that they wanted to close the story on it, but like it would have been cool if like he carried over into the next saga, if anything.
I think there was legs to that guy for sure. Like especially at the end when they kind of reveal that, like, a lot of spoilers, his DNA is inside of Samus. Like I think that there was a lot more story there.
Well, if anything, maybe they'll just clone him and make another one. But at that point, I'm like, oh, why didn't you just keep him alive? Like, that's the one time where like I didn't need the death to be definitive. Like
that's kind of like a cheap way to bring him back for sure. Like I think Ridley X worked because like Ridley has like definitively died at this, but like his story is more or less over. So now you clone him and it's like, okay, this is how we get Ridley back. Cool. That one to me with Ravenbeak. I would have just kept him alive. He didn't need to die
there, whereas like Ridley stayed alive through multiple games.
Yeah,
and also made sense with the X parasites. Their whole thing is cloning, whereas here they're gonna have to just clone him for no story reason aside from the fact they need him alive again, right? It's not because the X came by, unless we get Ravenbeak X, which we did get Ravenbeak X at the end. And
to be fair, also like,
got killed.
Who was there to clone him? Because like all the Mach and Chozo, they dead.
The space pirates, they'll be like, why are we cloning Ridley? We should be cloning this guy.
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, this guy is 0-1 on Samus. Ridley does have a couple dubs. So if I were to clone anybody, Ridley has a better track record. Ravenbeak, I mean, I guess you could technically say Ravenbeak beat Samus at the beginning of Dread.
You could say that.
So
yeah,
there is an argument for that. But at the end of the game, he kind of got bodied. So
right.
I don't know. Well, anyway, to answer your question real quick, I do think it's pretty low. I would say like 20% maybe, which is a shame because really cool character. I wish they didn't kill him off. And also because of how he was implemented, I don't see him kind of like appearing in Metroid Prime 4 or anything like that. Like it would just be weird to me to have him mentioned earlier in the timeline and then show up in Dread as if he's never been talked about before. That kind of literative, ludonarrative dissonance is kind of off-putting to me, and it already happens in other Metroid games, so I would want less of that. So unfortunately, I think he's dead.
It would be a great fight though. Like even the Chozo ghost fights are like
then again,
you can inject a little bit.
I don't know. I don't know. Actually, now that I think about it, they might clone him. Okay. I don't know who they is. They might clone him. I'm gonna bump it up to 35%.
Okay, well that's higher than me. So
clone factor there. They might bring him back somehow.
Okay, I think this is one that a lot of people have been asking, especially since the Metroid Prime HD sales figures have come out. So here we go. Metroid Prime 2 and 3 HD eventually happen. I'm not super high on this anymore. I don't know. It always felt to me like if you were going to re-release these games, you should do it Halo Collector's Edition style, where like you make Metroid Prime 1 awesome, and you slap the new controls on Metroid Prime 2 and 3, and those games can kind of be, what they are, and that's fine. That's all they need to be. And Metroid Prime 1 is kind of your showcase game. Now that Metroid Prime 1 is out, we know that Metroid Prime 4 is coming out. It's like, is there... and not that it didn't sell well. Like, I think it's performed well enough. But, like, I guess it's like, if the first one is coming in at under 2 million copies, like, what is the audience for 2 and 3? I'm not sure. And I don't know... I think it's more likely that they eventually make their way to Nintendo Switch Online in some form or fashion than they get like big re-releases. So I'm gonna go low. I think I'm gonna go 24%, so I can allow for a quarter chance for it to happen.
I'm gonna undercut you here, or I guess overcut you, and put it at 25%.
Okay.
So if it does happen, I was close.
You look like a genius. I look like a schmuck.
That's the end goal here, man.
Yeah.
Always has been. But yeah, I 100% agree. I think so. I mean, to my understanding, it seemed like they were making Metroid Prime to get back into the swing of things to develop Metroid Prime 4 in a way. I don't think that means that they're incentivized to do a 2 and a 3. Your point, I think, is correct. I think like if Metroid Prime Remastered only sold 1 million, I don't think there's a huge market for 2 and 3. I think people have gotten their fill for now of Metroid Prime as it is until the big boy comes out, the big Metroid Prime 4 release comes out.
Yeah.
I agree. I think what they'll do is eventually they'll release it on Nintendo Switch Online. Maybe like just as they did kind of like with Zero Mission and Fusion, released Echoes 1 month, Prime 3 comes out a few months later. As much as I would love that treatment, no, I don't think they're going to invest that much into releasing the second and third one, especially because I also think Prime 4 is going to be, as you've alluded to on this show previously on this episode and whatnot, it's going to be kind of a reboot in a way. Like it's going to be, I think, going to be similar to Metroid Prime 1 in terms of gameplay. The story is going to be brand new because I don't think it's really have anything to do with the story of the first 3 games. I don't think there's going to be a need for people to have played 2 and 3. I don't think you're going to need that buy-in of, to understand what's happening in Prime 4, you need to have played the first 3 games. No, I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think they have their kind of demo in a way for Prime 4 already on the Switch with Prime Remastered. Like this is a taste of what Prime has to offer in the future. And then Prime 4 is going to be that future. It would be great for 2 and 3 to get remastered. I mean, I would love that as much as the next Metroid fan. I mean, I would love to see Prime 2 and Prime 3 remastered. It'd be beautiful.
Sanctuary, Fortress, and Skytown
with dual analog controls. I mean, I would love to play Prime 3 with dual analog controls. Like, give me that all day. But I don't see Nintendo really doing that, which is a shame. But I think we'll eventually get the trilogy versions with with dual. I do think that they would release them with dual analog on Switch Online, though.
I do too.
Controls, whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they're going to invest like a whole remaster. Would it be sick to have 2 and 3 bundled together as like a remaster thing or something? Yeah, but I don't. I think they're just going to focus on Prime 4 for now. So yeah, I think that's pretty low for me.
You know what I could see? I could see maybe like a couple years in the future at this point, but like Metroid Prime 4 comes out and maybe it just like blows away like the expectations in terms of sales. If that were the case, I could maybe see Nintendo being like, hey, Retro, like take a small team, take 6 months, do your thing on Prime 2 and 3. That maybe. I could maybe see, but like, a very 24% chance. So
what I could see is maybe on the new console, what they do is do a full trilogy remaster to bring Prime Remastered to the next console. So we'll re-release Prime Remastered and then 2 and 3 Remastered on the new console. So that way you can have all 3 on the same one and, one's not stuck on the Switch and whatnot. And then Prime 4 will be there too. So I could see that maybe.
I could see that too. Yeah. That ain't no $40 game anymore though, which is fine. No. Actually, that'd be great. Okay.
I'm paying full price for it.
I got 2 more and then we'll wrap it up. So going on our discussion from a few weeks back that a lot of people seem to dig this conversation, so I'm bringing it up again.
Okay.
We get an open world Metroid game within the next 7 years. And 7 years might seem like kind of a weird number, but I'm picking that to basically signify the next Nintendo generation of console. So I guess I could have worded it as in like we get it on the next Nintendo console, but sometime within the next 7 years, there is an open world Metroid game. Your definition of open world can be, what it is. But yeah, there we go. To be honest, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they try and market Metroid Prime 4 as a quote unquote open world game. But in the way that I'm picturing it, I'm picturing something akin to Metroid Other M kind of style presentation, but like in a, I don't know, like a Breath of the Wild kind of world or something like that.
Jesus.
I'm going to go... We did pitch a cool open world Metroid game, but I don't think it'll ever happen, and it would need to be really awesome, and I think it would probably cost a lot more than you might get back. So again, I'm probably going to go low, but what do you think?
I'm going low because, I mean, if you look back at Breath of the Wild, right? Breath of the Wild was, I think, a Nintendo's response to Skyrim, right? Skyrim was one of the biggest games of all time. It really influenced a ton of games that came afterward, and open worlds, that was influenced by other things, right? But Skyrim had a really huge impact on the industry when it came out at the time. And I think it's kind of clear that Breath of the Wild was its influence. But the open world trend, I feel like, has been going on for so long. Like, is that going to be the kind of game that people want 6 or 7 years from now? I don't see Nintendo. Like, Nintendo is not a company to chase trends that hard. I think Zelda was one of the few times they did that, and obviously it paid off. And then, like, Tears of the Kingdom, I think, isn't necessarily chasing trends, but I think is very obviously influenced by games like Minecraft and whatnot. But the term open world, I think, it's kind of like comic book movies nowadays almost. Like, we've had like a decade or more of comic book movies.
That's a good analogy.
Are we going to be seeing... I mean, we probably will be forced to, like, I'm sure Marvel will continue to pump out these movies till we're all dead and long gone, and the sun's gone as well. But like, seeing a comic book movie nowadays is still hype, but it's not the same as seeing like their first Avengers back in the day. And then is it going to feel the same 10 years from now when we've been oversaturated with 20 years of comic book movies to the level that we've seen, or Marvel movies, whatever it is? So I'm thinking like 6-7 years from now, are people going to want an open world Metroid game? Is that something that Nintendo thinks people are going to want? I don't think so. I still think, number one, I think Metroid Prime is kind of open world ish enough, but I just don't see them chasing trends like that. I think they're going to I think what they're going to do is look for ways to innovate with Metroid Prime 4 for sure. But I don't think it's going to be the open world route. I don't know what that route could be. But I feel like the open worldness is something that's so today and the years past that I don't think it's going to be like the end goal for every IP ever nowadays going forward. And I definitely don't think Metroid's going to be included in that. I think it's going to be low. I'm also going to say like 29%.
I was going to actually go even lower than that. Because I actually agree with pretty much everything that you laid out. And I don't know, Doom and I, we had a lot of cool ideas, but they were, a lot of them were kind of pie in the sky ideas from two guys with a podcast versus like a game developer and like making a fun game. So I don't know how you would necessarily take that from the concept box and put it down to paper. So like part of me feels like something is coming for Metroid soon. Like, and what I mean by that is like, I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like Nintendo's going to try to do something to maybe level up the series a little bit. And I don't know what that is. And maybe I could be completely wrong. That's just kind of my intuition. But like, when they made that switch with Zelda, like there's no doubt it absolutely leveled up that series. And so it's the easiest comparable to make if you, and they kind of did that with Mario too, to an extent. Like Odyssey is more or less open world.
Yeah, I don't know.
More or less.
It's more open. I wouldn't say it's open world though. Like the levels, I mean, honestly,
there's certainly levels, but like each level is so massive that it's like
Right. Well, that's the thing is like that's the difference between an open world and an open world game, like a big
yeah.
world and open world game.
I see enough DNA in there where I could maybe not say that without feeling like I sound like a fool. So I guess what I would say is like I think Nintendo, like I do think that they want to get Metroid up to the next. You know, we talk about how Nintendo doesn't get Metroid all the time, but like they stand by it. They do keep making new games. They restarted development on Metroid Prime 4 instead of releasing a turd. So I mean, like they do have some kind of, you know, love or equity in this series. So like, and I do feel like they want to try something to kind of get it to another level.
Yeah. No,
But
I agree.
but I don't know what that is, and I don't know. And I feel like it just feels kind of easy to say, like, maybe make it an open world game. So I'm
Make
gonna
it
go
bigger.
low.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
maybe.
thing is like, and that's why I'm like, I'm just kind of racking my brain, and I just don't have that game developer brain, right? But like, you know, when you think of yes, they're gonna look for a way to plus up Metroid Prime. They're not just gonna do a new Metroid Prime game. Like they're gonna look for a way to
Yeah.
innovate, right? They always look to innovate. Innovation's a huge part of Nintendo. Everything they do. And it's easy. You're right. It's easy to think like, oh, what's the easiest way to do that? Like, just make it bigger, open world. Like, and to go to my previous point, it's not like people are gonna like not be playing open world games 5-10 years from now. I mean, Starfield is literally one of the biggest game releases this year. Tears of the Kingdom, another one. Like, they sell like hotcakes, and I can see 100% how Nintendo could look like at a game like Metroid Prime and be like, if we turn this into open world, this could print. So like, I can see that. But it wouldn't have obviously the fidelity of like a Metroid Prime remastered. On the other hand, which I also think is
Yeah.
a nice drawing point that Metroid Prime now has and has always had, but I think now is very much more apparent compared to its other titles in the library. Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is making an open world game is a crazy big investment. It's a huge investment. You can't just be churning out open world games, right? Like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, these games were in development for years. Starfield for years. Like all these games, even Odyssey, which I don't consider an open world game, was still in development for years. It's a bigger game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and you also have on the flip side of that,
like,
too,
are they going to
like,
do that for Metroid? Essentially,
like you look at all the Nintendo series that have went that route, and like it's the big boys. It's Mario. It's Zelda. It's Pokemon. Yeah. And
exactly.
and even with Pokemon, like there was, I actually like I was kind of saying earlier, like I think those games are fun, but like they have their issues for sure.
That would kill me to
have
see
their
a Metroid
issues.
game look like that. That's the thing. Is like that would kill me to look at a Metroid game like that, man.
That would be tough. Like that would be tough to, because I think like, say what you will about Metroid, but like typically the games all have like a very high quality in terms of like performance, visual stuff like that. Maybe more so than a lot of other. Yeah.
Stable, yes.
So I'm gonna go a little bit lower as well. I'm actually probably just gonna repeat my percent. I'll say 26%, because I could see Nintendo doing it, but I think that what kills that idea is, like you said, it is a big investment and
huge investment, and you lose a lot by gaining a lot. Really, like you would lose that fidelity. You'd lose like I think a lot of stuff that makes Metroid what it is, besides the gameplay, and I think even in the gameplay as well. I think Metroid Prime is. I think you can implement elements of that kind of stuff, and maybe less so on the open worldness, but maybe more on the player customization and the story and whatnot. Like maybe that's the stuff that like you kind of inject into it, not necessarily be like, hey, you can go and run right to the end of the game and kill Mother Brain with a power blast or power beam blast. That's it. Like just a charge shot and you're good. And as long as you don't get hit, you don't die, you win. That doesn't interest me. But if there's maybe more ways to personalize my play or find more depth in the Metroid experience that's already there, that I think is maybe a way to innovate. But still, I'm sure there's going to be that hook that they're really going to find.
like,
and open world is kind of hanging right there. So I don't know.
Even if Metroid Prime 4 had like side quests, like optional stuff that you could maybe do, and maybe you scan something and you see like, hey, the pirates have a base here, I should destroy it, and that's like a side quest, and like something that like you could still confine it. Like imagine Metroid Prime, you're in the pirate area in Findrana, and they're like, hey, we got this base in Findrana's edge. It's going to be awesome when it's up, and like maybe a side quest activates. You're like, well, I should destroy this base so that they can't equip Ridley with a super laser blaster or whatever, right? Or like those kind of things, or like maybe the Galactic Federation could patch you in and be like, hey, there's an actual bounty on this planet somewhere. You can go fight this boss if you want. Like, I think that kind of element would be cool.
That, I think, is where they might go, is maybe it'll be like a Metroid Prime 3 situation where you have a bunch of different planets you can go on to, and you have an incentive to go to the different planets because you have bounties to collect, and that kind of takes you away from the main story because you're going around collecting bounties. That, I think, would be really cool. I would also love stuff like, because Metroid in a way is like a bunch of like big dungeons kind of like stitched together, right?
Almost.
Kind of area, you know? But I would love like something more Zelda or like Destiny style dungeons that are more like specific locations that you dive really deep into with like specific activities and puzzles. Maybe you can't die and you get sent to the beginning, stuff like that you come across and you kind of dive into, that takes you away from the path you're already on and rewards you in some way for completing it.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
You know, that
could
kind
be
of
a nice
open
middle
world
ground.
stuff. Yeah, and I know people like to balk at this, but I think it'd be really cool if they start introducing, being able to upgrade your upgrades, upgrade your stats, make some adjustments, apply different mods or like attachments to them, or like this version can shoot farther at the cost of damage, stuff like that. I think is a natural progression for the games. I would love to see it because I think
Federation Force did that, and that everybody dumps on Federation Force, but like that wasn't the worst idea. And I will say this too.
It's a bad idea.
I've said it a million times, but like there is a point where like you don't need to collect the rest of the missile expansions. Give me something that changes my beam or like whatever, right? Like so, I don't disagree with that at all, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, last one here, and then we'll get out of here. This is a Smash Bros. One, actually.
Maybe one that we have a high percentage for, because I feel like we've given some low percents.
Yeah.
Actually, no. At the beginning, we had some high ones. We
did. We had like a 98.
I have 100% in this, so I take that back. I'm sorry.
I'll just spoiler. I'm gonna go high for this one, but I'll let you go first.
Okay. Good.
The next Super Smash Bros. Game has less than 4 playable Metroid characters.
No, less than 4.
So right now there are 4 playable characters. So there's Samus, Zero Suit Samus, Dark Samus, and Ridley.
5%.
5%. Okay. Wow.
5%. I think at least I think we'll stay at 4, actually. I think we will stay at 4. I think we could have 5. Because we have Samus and Dark Samus, which I think they'll keep Dark Samus. I think we're keeping Zero Suit. I think we're keeping Ridley. And then I think they add Ravenbeak or Silex, whoever it is from Prime 4. Yeah. I don't think, unless the new Smash game is like a reboot and they just trim all of the franchises. But if it's like an Ultimate situation or even a Smash 4 situation, I think we stay at 4. I think I don't think we're going to lose characters. I think we're going up.
So I realized when I read this question, I said I had a high percentage, but then I was like, oh, crap.
As you were reading it, I'm like, wait, this is not going to give me a high percentage.
Yeah, I was like, no, damn it, this is going to be a low percent. Although, okay. I think that we're going to stay at 4. However, I could see Dark Samus on the chopping block. Because I think like the next Smash Bros. Game, I do think they're going to try to bring in the roster a little bit. And frankly, like there's a lot of characters that you probably don't like. If Dr. Mario and Dark Pit and Lucina and basically any Echo Fighter, like if those characters were cut, I mean, is anyone really like, oh man, that's terrible? Like, I love Dark Samus, but like if Dark Samus was cut, I'd be like, yeah, whatever.
But on the other hand, on one hand, I'm sure doesn't cost them much in the game to like hold on to clones. And I would love if they took those clones and made them unique characters. Like, it would be sick if they made Dark Samus not a Samus clone and have her fight completely differently, like she does in the games. That would be my angle: is take the characters that are clones and make them not clones, not get rid of them.
I mean, I agree. I agree with that. Which is almost a separate conversation, because like, would I like that? Yes. Do I think that Nintendo's history with Smash indicates they would do that? Not really. I mean, Ganondorf still has the Falcon Punch, for God's sakes. It's been 20 years.
I know. And they added a sword that it's not even in the Zelda games. It's from a tech demo, which I think is really funny.
I can't say I'm high on that, but I do think we'll stay at 4, because I think that they're gonna probably boot out Dark Samus and bring in either Ravenbeak or the Emmy or maybe Silex or whoever the big bad.
Emmy's the good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a cool character. Probably, I think
I think it's Silex or Ravenbeak though.
Like is Metroid like I guess it depends on when the next Smash game comes out. Like if it comes out when in and around Prime 4, I think you're probably looking at Silex or like whoever the bad guy ends up being. And if not, then I don't know, maybe like if it comes out in like 2025, like is Metroid Dread a little bit too far gone for inclusion?
I don't know. I mean,
maybe
we
not.
still have other M Samus
Yeah.
in Smash, and the other M is 13 years old, and we still have other M Samus in the game. Dark Samus was added in Ultimate, and Dark Samus hasn't been in Metroid in who knows how long. Meta Ridley was part of Ridley, and Meta Ridley is only in 2 games from over a decade ago. I don't think that's necessarily. I think they more so look at who would be a more fun or cool character to put in the game, not necessarily how old they are. That said, I mean, I know a lot of people have the opinion of like, oh, the next Smash game they're going to reduce the roster. I don't necessarily agree. I feel like they have no incentive to do that. I think Ultimate, if anything, they're just going to keep like they'll do Ultimate Deluxe or whatever on the next game, the next system, and they're just going to add more characters to it. Or they'll make another Smash game and keep a lot of the characters. I mean, Smash is such a casual game. Like, they don't care about balance. It doesn't matter if the game has 200 characters on the roster. Does it really? Like, I feel like if they can keep adding to it, why wouldn't they? I feel like if anything, they're going to keep adding to it and just make it. It's already super bloated. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to hit 100 characters. I'm surprised they haven't tried it already to hit 100 characters. So I don't really think they're going to trim, to be honest.
I don't know. Like, something just says that like they're gonna I don't know, maybe try something different with the next Smash Bros game and like and I don't know what that is, but like it's like how do you top Ultimate? I'm not really sure, like other than just adding like new cool stages or something like that.
Exactly, I think they just add to it because like I mean look at Mario Kart.
Yeah,
we can't top this. We're just gonna re-release it and add stuff to it for a decade. And
maybe you're right. Like that might be exactly what they end up doing. I don't know. I just kind of thought like. Maybe they're going to try something else. Again, no idea what that could be. And I think if they do, then I think you do get like a smaller roster. But I think Metroid still. I mean, obviously Samus is going to be there. I think Zero Suit Samus is pretty much a fixture, and I don't think that they're gonna go back to blend them together again. Yeah. I think now that they're separate, they're probably staying separate. Ridley, I think, is going to stay. Dark Samus is the one for me that's in danger.
Well, that's the thing is, if anything, I think they'll replace Dark Samus with
another
a Ravenbeak or a Stylix or an Emmy. I don't think we would lose the slot. I think it would either go to someone else or we'd get an additional one. So I think us going down to 3 is unlikely. I don't know what I said, but I don't know.
It was low.
15,
I'm going to go...
20%?
I'll go 15. What I should have done is actually worded it for 5 characters or less. So that would have made it more interesting. 4 characters is just kind of what we have, but nevertheless. Okay, well there we go. Samus's percentages. Always fun to dust off this little segment.
Yes. My favorite percentage-based game.
Yeah, there you go. You know
Aside from Smash, I guess.
Oh yeah, right, that one. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Aside from that, yeah.
Well, thank you for not pulling a Doominal Crossing and answering 0% or 100% for every single question. I appreciate that. I know you're listening, Doom. You know I hate that. Ugh.
I did give 100% for one of them, so I'm not.
I can let one.
I'll give you too much credit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you, everyone, for checking us out. And, of course, you can check us out over on Twitter. We are at Omega Metroid Pod. I am at Spiteri316. Dak is at DakCity_. And, you know what? Come hang out with us in Discord. We're talking Metroid. We're having conversations. A lot of what we talk about on this show is really inspired by a lot of what we talk about in Discord. So, you know, you can, in a way, come and kind of get your 2 cents in on the show. So, yeah, check us out over on Discord. OmegaMetroid.com. All of the news, all of the guides, all the maps, everything you need is over there. We got a Patreon that you can check out if you really want to take your membership to the next level. And, of course, check us out wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe. Recommend us to that Metroid fan in your life. We are going to get out of here, but we hope everyone has an awesome week.
Yes.
Ciao, everybody.